For more, we are joined by Renato Cruz de Castro, distinguished professor from the Department of International Studies at Salle University. Professor, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, so security ties front and center at the summit, and we heard that phrase again, ironclad commitment by the U.S. president. What does it tell you about how the contours of the U.S.-Philippine alliance will look like? And would it be enough to give assurance to Mr. Marcos?
Well, of course, that has been repeated several times. I heard President Barack Obama mentioning it in April 2014. What is important, of course, is you have to look at the context. First, of course, is the fact that, in the last 6 years, we had a president, former president, who was very skeptical about the reliability of the United States and basically directed the Philippines away from the United States towards China. But now you have the sitting president right inside the White House and basically being assured by President Joe Biden. And the second, of course, is the context in the 21st century. Of course, it's always been focused that the primary security concern of the Philippines is, of course, the South China Sea or the West Philippine Sea. But now, of course, the Philippines is being boxed because of the growing tension also over Taiwan. So this really makes the alliance more important than ever, by the fact that it's not only the West Philippine Sea, South China Sea dispute. There's, of course, the growing tension over Taiwan, which is, of course, the Philippines is the closest neighbor to Taiwan.
Yeah, the Philippines has moved quickly under the Marcos Jr. administration to realign itself closer to the U.S. and away from China. Why such a big shift from the previous Duterte administration?
Well, actually, the shift already began during the latter part of the Duterte administration. There was a realization, last 1 year of the Duterte administration, when he eventually realized that there's no point, of course, in abrogating the visiting force agreement. And in November 2021, the Duterte administration signed the joint vision for the alliance. So what President Marcos is simply doing is continuing what began at the latter part of the Duterte administration. And I would like to emphasize this. This was, of course, the statement by the former National Security Advisor, Dr. Clarita Carlos, when she mentioned recently in one symposium where you have the Chinese ambassador present, it's China that pushed the Philippines into the arms of the United States. So, ask the question, why did President Marcos simply decided to strengthen the alliance again? You have no one to blame but China itself. China has been uncompromising, of course, in the terms of the West Philippine Sea, South China Sea, and of course, again, the growing tension that's happening just north of the Philippines. That's, of course, Taiwan. So that's a basic answer to that. It's China that pushed the Philippines back into the arms of the United States.
All right. Professor, there are also worries that reviving alliance with the U.S. could drag the Philippines into the conflict if China were to invade Taiwan. Of course, Mr. Marcos has been trying to allay public fear of such a scenario, but is there any way for the Philippines to avoid being drawn into it, or is it just wishful thinking?
Well, in terms of geography, President Marcos himself mentioned, you can see Taiwan from the northern part of Luzon. If you have a major conflict there, we'll be affected. First of all, we have 200,000 Filipinos working in Taiwan. And of course, the fact that we would, just like happened in Ukraine, you'll have a massive flow of refugees from Taiwan. And of course, surely, China would take control of the Luzon Strait to surround Taiwan. So whether we like it or not, we are a prisoner of geography. We have to take into account geography. And of course, we are a treaty ally of the United States. We expect the United States to assist us, like in case in the West Philippine Sea, South China Sea. Of course, the United States also expects the Philippines to assist it when times of need. That's we're stuck in it because we are in alliance relationship with the United States. And of course, at this point in time, neutrality is not an option because, again, when you talk about neutrality, you should have credible defense capability. The armed forces of the Philippines at this point in time simply doesn't have the capability to effect a credible, armed neutrality if, just in case push comes to shove in that situation.
Well, China has been watching. Last week, South Korea's president visited the U.S., and now this week, the Philippines president is in Washington. How do you think China will view this, and what sort of reaction are you expecting?
Oh, China already gave the reaction 2 weeks ago when it was announced that the 3 of the EDCA sites would, of course, be located in northern Luzon. You have the reaction from the Chinese ambassador here and from the Chinese foreign minister spokesperson, warning us of allowing ourselves to be dragged into this conflict. And of course, the reaction here, of course, is the fact that those EDCA sites are within Philippine territory, and that's, of course, should be none of China's business. In a way, China is acting like it has an effective suzerainty over the Philippines, and of course, even in the case of South Korea, those matters are, of course, between the United States and South Korea, and the Philippines and Japan. Those are matters that have to do with our national security, that has to do with our alliance. They are matters of our, sovereign rights. China has no business telling us what to do, given the fact that, of course, just like I mentioned earlier, China pushed us into this alliance again.
All right, Professor, we'll have to leave it there for now. But thank you very much for your insight this morning. That was Renato Cruz de Castro, Distinguished Professor from the Department of International Studies at Salle University.